Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm David Bowles, and today we're going to discuss the missing value of what you value. The off switch. You are standing at a drugstore counter on an ordinary weeknight. You hold a phone over a small black terminal. You're buying cold medicine and a quart of milk. The screen blinks. A green check appears. And in that second and a half, a question traveled a few thousand miles, touched a machine you will never meet, and came back approved in your name. Today I get to say the sentence a writer spends years earning. The new book is out. It is called The Off Switch: Money, Property, and the Power to Switch Off a Life. 110,000 words of journalism, history, and commentary about the most ordinary act in the world, paying for things, and about the people and institutions who can make that act stop working. Here is the idea at the center of it. Money has come in two families. For about as long as we have had money, there is value that travels by possession, the coin, the note, the bill in your pocket that asks nothing of anyone. And there is value that travels by permission, the tally, the ledger, the account entry that moves only when a chain of institutions agrees to move it. Neither family is wicked. A healthy monetary world has always kept both, because each covers the other's failures. The story of our moment is that the first family is being retired, and the second family is being wired to a switch. I know the objection because I hold it too. Most declined cards are innocent. An expired card, a tripped fraud rule, a mistyped billing address, a system somewhere rebooting. The book takes that objection seriously, because the innocence of the ordinary decline is the camouflage of the extraordinary one. The same screen, the same line behind you, the same red word, whether the cause is a typo or a government list. If the decline is a mistake, the mistake costs you an evening. If it is a decision, the decision arrives wearing the same gray screen, and nothing at the counter will ever tell you which of the two you met. So the book documents the decisions. In February 2022, Canadian banks froze the accounts of protest donors without a court order. This past January, Canada's Federal Court of Appeal ruled the emergency invocation behind those freezes unreasonable and beyond the law, and the government has asked the Supreme Court of Canada to take it up. In December 2025, the European Union voted to make the immobilization of 210 billion euros of another sovereign's reserves indefinite. New British rules began phasing in this April. 90 days of notice and written reasons before a bank may close an account. Rules that exist because banks had been closing accounts and refusing to say why. Sweden, the most cashless society in Europe, passed a law in May forcing grocery stores and pharmacies to accept cash again because Swedish planners thought about war and remembered that cash still works when the network dies. And the general manager of the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank of central banks, said out loud in 2020 that a central bank digital currency gives its issuer absolute control over the rules that determine its use, along with the technology to enforce them. He offered that control as a feature. The switch also has a lineage, and the book runs the long way around to show it. Medieval law kept a name for a person cut out of the economy: civil death. The Templars, the bankers of medieval Europe, learned on a single October morning in 1307 what happens when a sovereign decides the ledger now belongs to him. India canceled most of its paper money in a single evening in 2016 and called it policy. North Korea did it in 2009 and called it reform. and capped what a family could convert at roughly $40 at the unofficial rates. 18 chapters. 4 short true scenes I call gates, standing between the parts of the book, the way checkpoints stand between districts. 1 chapter of fiction that announces itself as fiction in its first line. Everything else, documented. I want to tell you how the book was built, because this subject attracts a certain shelf, and I refuse to sit on it. Every chapter is keyed to a sources and verification section at the back. The glossary defines the machinery in plain language. A section called What Will Age First names the claims most likely to be overtaken by events, because a book about a moving system owes you a list of its own perishables. Where the record is contested, the book says so. And where the switch has been used for a purpose I support, the book says that too. I endorse the immobilization of a war-making sovereign's war chest, and I spend pages counting what that endorsement costs the system that performed it. This is a book about architecture and accountability. It was written to be checked. And I wrote it for the person at the counter. The donor whose bank account froze around a political opinion, the customer whose funds died with a founder's password, anyone who has stood in a checkout line while a machine decided whether they were still a person in good standing. No figure in this book is a composite, because the moment a writer invents a victim, the reader earns the right to doubt the real ones. Why now? Because the conversation about money is turning into a conversation about permission, and conversations about permission are always, underneath, conversations about power. The book takes no party's side because the switch outlives every administration that touches it. I have spent years studying how democracies wobble, and the wobble starts with paperwork long before it finds a soldier, a rule that makes one inconvenient person's life stop working, and a crowd deciding the person probably deserved it. A switch that exists will eventually be thrown. The people who build switches always promise to throw them only at someone else. The off switch, money, property, and the power to switch off a life is available now in paperback and for Kindle. The paperback runs 390 pages on cream paper because some things should still travel by possession. You will find it at bowlesbooks.com, and half a century of work lives at the same address with everything else at bowles.com. If the book earns it, leave a review where you bought it. Reviews move books the way word of mouth always has, one honest sentence at a time. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm David Bowles, wishing you a full evening and a profitable tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be a human meme.